Welcome to the season finale of the SimGear GT3 Premier League by BULERS. We are at the historic Suzuka circuit in Japan, and we are ready to determine who goes away with the big prizes and indeed the jackpots in this season of the BULERS SimGear GT3 Premier League. There you see the familiar outline of this Suzuka circuit. The only time this season that we're running a figure of 8 layout, of course, over and under the iconic 130R corner. Conditions looking good, and certainly things are looking good as well for our championship favourites. In particular, Vladislav Shopov looks like he is on the verge of securing his first BULERS championship. 900 points is his score coming out of round 6 of the season at Laguna Seca. That puts him 95 points clear of Philip Koenig and 218 points clear of third place man Rostislav Kostev as well. So that means that we're expecting glory here potentially for the Impulse Racing driver. And equally in the AM class, even though the gap is smaller, Milan Milchev certainly comes in as the favourite. 562 points for Milchev. He is on good form at the moment. There is the BMW. There is all of the off-track racing team, I think, in one shot there. Off-track racing have been very strong so far this season. And Milan Milchev looks likely to be the champion at the conclusion of this day. However, he still has Lazar Kaczarski and Ivelo Dimitrov for immediate company in the AM Championship. He's 40 points clear of Kaczarski, 59 clear of Dimitrov. So it's a bit closer in those circumstances. Also worth noting that there is a drop round system implemented, which does mean that it will be a couple of days until things are finalized and solidified after this weekend, but we can at least give you an idea of who the champion is on a provisional basis in each class, as well as in the team standings as well. In the team standings, it looks very much as though Impulse Racing are going to be on top, 2,092 points, leading by 350 over Negative Delta by Madness. So then, as always, this weekend is 2 races and a qualifying session. The 20-minute quali is ongoing at the moment. There will then be a 20-minute race, and the top 10 from that race will be reversed on the grid for the 40-minute feature. So we'll see who puts the fast laps in initially here. There is the number 6 car. There is Iordanin Svetanov, who we expect to be one of the favourites for a podium here today, quite possibly. We spoke of the potential for champions, and there's a lot of reason to be interested in that championship beyond the glory as well. There are jackpots to consider as well. In the pro class, the championship is worth 150 euros, a total prize pool of 600 euros across the championship. 150 euros for the pro title, 100 euros for second place, 50 for third place, and the AM title also worth 100 euros as well. So jackpots in the minds potentially of some of these drivers as well. You will have paid a 25 euro entry fee to come into the season, and that of course is then distributed out into the jackpots at the end of the year. It looks like Vladislav Stefanov is on a quick lap. It looks like a few drivers on fast laps at the moment. Julian Janowski sets the early benchmark there. His time of 1:59.584. He's racing for the Jekov Rally School team in his Porsche, the 992 GT3R. There's the car behind him, the 28 machine of Ivo Serafimov. Now, it was the very early stages of the session last week or 2 weeks ago, round 6 of the season, It was the very first flying lap, I believe, that actually ended up being the pole time. So we do have to keep an eye on some of those quick drivers around the circuit, because they will come in with fast laps pretty much instantly on the basis of what we saw last week. A 1:59.563 by Joris Ums is immediately eclipsed by Philip Koenig. That could be one of the times to beat. A 1:58.403 for Koenig on his first flying lap of the session. So Koenig immediately goes top. He currently sits second in at the standings. And let's see if anybody else can get into that low 58 bracket. Will we see a 57 around the circuit today? We ride on board there through the spoon bend at the moment. A fairly innocuous looking corner on paper, but it's one that really does challenge. Always feels like a corner where you can maybe take 5 kilometers an hour more speed than you actually can, and the AstroTurf on the outside of the corner isn't forgiving if you try and you get it wrong. 130R also a lot more of a challenge. We just go sweeping through there. A lot more of a challenge in these cars than, say, a Formula One machine, or even a Group 2 car, a GT 500. Across the line it goes. Now we ride on board with, this is Serafimov. I think he did improve a little bit there, but remains fourth fastest. Slightly reduced numbers on the entry perspective this weekend. It's a national holiday in Bulgaria, which means I think quite a few of our friends in the BULERS community are actually taking a break with family. I think quite a lot of them might even be in Greece, actually. So there's a lot of people chilling out in the sun, maybe a few of them watching from a beach somewhere as they keep an eye on proceedings here at the season finale. A few drivers maybe realising they're out of the chances of getting a top 5, and therefore out of the chance of getting a jackpot as well. Still a very competitive looking grid. A lot of the fastest drivers in the league are here to try and finish their season on a high. Certainly Philip Koenig has laid down the benchmark. We still haven't seen a lap though from Vladislav Shopov. Shopov with a outlap ongoing, I think, at the moment. Indeed, Shopov is now on the circuit, but it's going to be a little while before we see a representative time from him. We currently see Ivaylo Dimitrov on screen. Dimitrov, who runs in the AM class in this familiar Ferrari, currently third in those standings. Another Ferrari here in the hands of Lazar Kaczarski. This is the man who sits second in the AM class championship at the moment. Just lost screen there momentarily. I think application minimized from one of the team. Hopefully we get the pictures back in the commentary box momentarily, but Koenig still fastest out there on the track for now. The German sim racing Porsche that has been so fast all season long. It's rather unsurprising that he sets the early benchmark, but Vladislav Shopov has been really one of one this year. Has been a lot better at times, just from a consistency basis, more so than anything else. Consistency is everything. Over the course of a championship season, we've seen others show up and show out on occasion. Ventsislav Rachinov, second fastest out there at the moment, a 1:59.045. Almost 10 minutes into the session. Svetinov, Ums and Janovsky, your top 5. And it's Serafimov, Kochev. The first Uram drivers is Vladislav Stefanov of Red Zone Racing. Again, holding the flag high for Mercedes. Mercedes-AMG GT3, maybe not the favoured car. The Porsche 992 GT3R has been the weapon of choice for most drivers this season. Still no flying lap in from Vladislav Shopov. Dimitar Palauzov has just set his first flying lap in at the 106 off-track racing Lamborghini, but still nothing yet from Shopov. I think that will change in the next few moments, though. Philip Koenig still lapping quicker. Or has still got the benchmark, that 158.403. He's the only driver currently in the 58. Everybody else is in the 1 minute 59 bracket. We have now got our first time from Vladislav Shopov, and it's a time good enough for pole, a 158.032. What a lap from the Impulse Racing driver. It's all Porsches in the top 8, and it's the Impulse Racing Porsche that is the fastest of all. Philip Koenig, second fastest. He has improved to a 158.374, but it is Shopov with the upper hand at the moment. Shopov versus Koenig in the championship, albeit with Koenig a long way back. And it's Shopov versus Koenig potentially going to be the battle of the weekend here as well. Of course, with a slightly smaller grid than usual, we might have some interesting drivers towards the sharp end in race 2 in the early stages as well. That reverse grid could look very interesting. It looks like some of the AM front runners are on for overall top 10s here, so that could be very interesting. Again, producers, no picture in the commentary box the last 5 minutes. Please fix. Vladislav Shopov could be on another fast lap. See if he has more left in him. I suspect any efforts that are made would be a direct counter-attack to Philip Koenig. So if Koenig can find more speed, then I'm sure that Vladislav Shopov will go digging through his bag of tricks. Ventsislav Rachinov and Ildan Svetinov also not improving. Still just the two drivers in the, in fact, no, 3 drivers, I correct myself now, in the 158 barrier, because Ventsislav Rachinov has gone third fastest, so the leading negative delta by Madness driver is now in the top 3. Fetinov, Ums, Janovsky, Serafimov, Kochev, Stefanov and Dimitrov rounding out your top 10 at this stage. We are 5 minutes away from the end of the session, which also means we're just a few minutes away from the race getting underway here. Again, if anyone in production can hear me, I don't have any pictures because Terzo's minimized his application, so please fix. Still waiting with bated breath to see whether there'll be any changes towards the end of this session. It is still a 58.0 that is the benchmark. Will we see a magic 157 before the end if it's going to come from anybody? One has to expect it's either going to be Koenig or Shopov, but right now they'd both be happy with a front row start. Roy Vivek has just improved into the top 10. He goes 10th fastest in the Automech Psycho Radios Porsche. Which does in fact make it 9 Porsches in at the top 10. The sole interloper is Vladislav Stefanov in the Red Zone Racing Mercedes. Again, TV crew, please give me pictures. I don't have pictures. Vladislav Shopov, currently fastest. Janovsky across the line. Can now see him on my screen once again. Turning into the first corner. Powering out of turn 2. Quite easy to step over the mark there. Koenig looks like he's on a quick one. He's had a purple. Oh, well, just as soon as we see it, he spins. And we also had a spin up ahead of him as well, I think from Roy Vivek. And that is an illustration of just how tricky 130R is. Barely a corner these days in the world of Formula One. But it's still something that can unsettle a car, particularly a mid or rear-engined car. There is another rear-engined car, Serafimov in another of the Porsches. Top half of the grid looking remarkably like Porsche Carrera Cup racing. Only 1 minute of the session left to go. Once the clock hits 20 minutes, your session comes to an end. So this is the last chance saloon for anybody to improve. Can Serafimov maybe find a time that's good enough to get him into the top 10? The number 28 Jekov rally team entry fires through 130R, and again we see a driver just pushing it too hard through 130R. Fine margins between acing that corner and getting it very, very wrong. And it's those fine margins that the drivers are experimenting with in qualifying. If they do that in the race, of course, it's a lot more costly. Krastin Stanchev comes up upon the scene of the incident. gets through cleanly in the BMW M4 GT3. Vladislav Shopov, meanwhile, is cruising. And he's cruising towards pole position. Getting a replay here of Serafimov slamming it into the wall. And that was the last action, really, of the qualifying session. And the grid, the two championship contenders, the two fastest men in the league on the front row, Vladislav Shopov and Filip Koenig on row 1 of the grid. Then it's Rachinov and Svetanov on row 2, Joris Ums and Julian Janovsky on row 3, Serafimov and Kochev row 4, Vladislav Stefanov in 9th position. He's the leading AM car alongside Roy Vivek. Dimitrov and Mavrodiev rounding out the top dozen cars. 13th on the grid, Milen Milchev, who's leading the AM Championship, of course. Ivelo Dimitrov with him. Krastin Stanchev, 15th. Alexander Nikolov is next. Katsarski and Palauzov, 17th and 18th. I don't think we saw Chris Vasilyov in the qualifying session, but he is scheduled to be out there and line up 19th on the grid. And with that, we're just a few moments away from the 20-minute sprint. No pit stops to consider, just pure racing. So then, there you see the circuit once again. We've already seen the intricacies of this layout during the qualifying session. A couple of incidents at 130R, of course. The next challenge for everybody is finding some room through the S's, the section of the circuit that presents a bit of a technical challenge if you're driving through it at speed on your own, but if you're trying to fit two GT3 cars through there side by side, suddenly it gets a lot harder. Indeed, it looks like just about everybody is there and ready to go racing. 2x2 formation for this rolling start then. Will it be Shopov or Koenig who gets the best getaway? Shopov, your champion-elect here, with a comfortable points lead. Just needs 2 solid results today and a €150 jackpot for winning the title will be his. Koenig and Shopov lead the field away. And as they approach the start gantry, the lights blaze and we are racing. Good start there from Janovsky from the 3rd row of the grid. He did a pretty solid launch there. He could be challenging for 3rd. He's in the middle for 3rd as they go through the first corners, and indeed he manages to tow the needle down into 3rd place. Very good going from him, side by side between the negative delta drivers for 4th position, Rachinov and Svetanov. Oh, and a spin further back, that was Roy Vivek in the Automech Psycho Radios car, falling back through the order in a spin. But all fairly clean at the sharp end of the order. Shopov leading from Koenig, leading from Janovsky. And Rachinov got the best of the negative delta battle through the first couple of corners. Joris Ums there in 6th place. The Belgian racer would love to finish with a top 5 under his belt from this race. I think that would be his best result of the season if he were to achieve it. Kochev, Serafimov, Stefanov leading in AM, and then Alexander Nikolov. Now entered on my screen as a pro driver, so I think Nikolov may have been bumped up. He had been an AM previously. Koenig powers out of Spoon. Oh, and a bit wide there from Janovsky. Janovsky drops it down to 7th place after that brilliant start that got him up into 3rd position from 6th on the grid. Janovsky has dropped down outside of the top 5. More than likely exactly what I alluded to during qualifying. Spoon corner. A corner that tempts you to take a little bit more speed than you actually can. The finest of margins between getting it very right and getting it horribly wrong. Philip Koenig in the wheel tracks of Vladislav Shopov as they come across the line. Pretty sure this race will be an even 10 laps, all things considered. Maybe 11. That's probably 11, considering they're just under the 2-minute marker, so I think we are on for 11 laps. Replay here of Roy Verveek getting into a spin. Oh, and, well, difficult to fault him there. Normally, you're told to slam the brakes when you're going the wrong way towards a gravel trap, but if he'd done that, he might have come to a halt in front of everybody else, which would have been a far worse incident. Rostislav Kochev, meanwhile, in 6th position, flashing the headlights, letting Joris Ums know, I'm here, and I want your position, mate. Julian Janowski just behind as well. Expect him to be feisty as he comes back towards the rear of these two. Provided he has the pace to do so, of course. He was in 3rd position, and he'll be very keen to at least salvage a top 5 after that mistake at Spoon. We've seen errors at Spoon, we've seen errors at 130R. We know how treacherous this circuit is. Kochev in the slipstream of Joris Ums. Rostislav with a little bit more speed there through 130R and a bit later on the brakes going into the Casio triangle as well. Very good driving, but Joris Ums just about holds on. I really thought that he wasn't getting back from that after Kochev dived up the inside with such conviction, but no. The red and white Automet car, the 32, remains in 5th position. That triangle is possibly the best overtaking zone on the circuit, the Casio triangle. Final chicane. Turn 1, bit of a braver move, I grant you, but it's also one that's possible. Of course, it's also quite possible to chuck one at the Degners, but it's very difficult to run 2 cars through the Degners. So just coming to the top of the S's now. The next flick to the right is Degner 1, then Degner 2. Committed run through Degner 1 can sometimes lead to a move at Degner 2. Ivelo Dimitrov with suspension damage, and that's a big story because he is 3rd in the AM Championship, and I think we're going to get a look at how that happened. Oh dear, yeah, there was no saving the toe link there. Big slam into the wall as he exited 130R. Dimitrov, this could cost him actual money, lest we forget, with the prize pots. He's currently 3rd in the championship, but he's also just 7 points off being 5th in the championship. That could be a big story. Milen Milchev, meanwhile, diving to the inside here of Alexander Nikolov, who again is now listed as a pro-class driver, so not a move for AM position. Side-by-side racing, maybe even 3-wide racing, because here comes Chris Vasilyov as well. Milen Milchev allowing the Ferrari the corner. He even got to go 2 wide there through 130R. Vasilyov gets past Milen Milchev. Good racing from everybody there to keep that coordinated. Here once again comes Julian Janowski. Now Joris Ums has lost out to Rostislav Kochev. So Kochev has gotten through into 5th place. And now Joris Ums is under fire as well from Julian Janowski. No move made at the first couple of corners. Now they come through the S's. Janowski showing a nose there as Ums momentarily goes missing. There he is. Great side-by-side action here through the S's. He's going to have the inside line for the Degners as Joris Ums, but with the outside coming over the S's, unfortunately, by the time they actually get to the apex of Degner, he's already behind. Janowski moves up to 6th place then. you're watching this racing and enjoying it, keep an eye on the BULERS Facebook page. Go have a look there. You can get in contact, maybe sign up for a future season if you're an iRacer yourself. Lots of exciting plans for the further seasons of the BULERS Simgear GT3 Premier League. And perhaps some other projects as well. Chris Vasiliov in 11th place, just on the fringe of the top 10. Of course, this battle for 10th place is also effectively the battle for pole position in race 2 with the top 10 reverse grid at the moment. Alexander Nikolov, the newly minted Pro Class driver, according to our timing and scoring, would be on pole position for race number 2, the last pit stop race of the season. Jorisum's in 7th place. Oh, and that was a big, big hit to the wall there from Alexander Nikolov. Milan Milchev had nowhere to go there either, also tapped the Ferrari. Yet another demonstration. It was actually quite a weird one. Just broke away under... After the corner was already completed, the Ferrari just broke away from him there. It looked like Milan Milchev was slowing down as well. I hope he hasn't damaged his car. There's Milchev. He is still running, and he seems to still be running at speed as well. So that's good news for the off-track racing BMW outfit, and also for Milan himself, as he hunts down glory in the championship. The good news as well for him is that, of course, we saw Ivelo Dimitrov with his damage. Lazar Kaczarski is also still behind him at the moment, so his closest two rivals in the championship are actually still behind him. Just behind him is Dimitar Palauzov, another off-track racing entry, though of course he's in a Lamborghini. It does look like Milchev is struggling though, out of the Degna 2 there, just running it wide. Lazar Kaczarski is now on his rear bumper. Dimitar Palauzov has gotten through. Palauzov currently 4th in the championship and 66 points off. This is before drop scores are taken into consideration, of course. Vladislav Shopov has been under pressure from Philip Koenig this whole race as well. Gap has been around the 6/10 mark the entire race at the front of the order, so battles all through the pack, including for the race lead potentially if Koenig can find a way through. Here comes Kaczarski though, on the back of Milan Milchev here for 14th, but more importantly, the first and second place cars in the AM Championship. With the scoring system being what it is, losing a position wouldn't be too much of a casualty for Milan Milchev. It'll only cost him a couple of points in the championship, but still, he'd like to finish the season with a good weekend, and he'd certainly like to finish the season by once again showing that he's a cut above in the AM class, and with a car that seems to be a little bit wounded, that's going to be hard work, at least in this first race. We're just over half distance then, and it is Vladislav Shopov that leads the way from Philip Koenig. They're half a second apart at the front of the order. In 3rd place is Ratchidov. In 4th place is Svetanov. Then it's Kochev. Then it's Janovsky. Stefanov leads in the AM class. That's the driver in 8th place. But all eyes on this battle for 14th at the moment, and Milan Milchev makes the error. Milan Milchev lets Lazar Kaczarski through, but Krastin Stanchev immediately fires past in the other off-track racing BMW, so 1 place lost by off-track racing, and then 2 positions gained by off-track racing, as Stanchev goes from 16th to 14th there in one fell swoop. I think there may have been an error on this lap by Philip Koenig, because he went from 4/10 down to 1.2 seconds down. So I think Philip Koenig in 2nd place must have made an error somewhere. Through the Casio triangle they go. Joris Ulms for Automech Psycho Radios. Was, of course, in 5th place for a little while, but 7th place would still be a strong finish. Certainly not settling, though. Still there behind Julian Janowski. There's Philip Koenig powering out of top end of the S's in the shadow there of the famous carousel. Koenig, as I said, he was staying within about half a second of the race leader. But then on the previous lap, suddenly that gap doubled. He dropped some time somewhere. Koenig still keeping a watching brief, though. There's Joris Ulms, who is being caught a little bit, actually, by the Mercedes of Stefanov as well. So Stefanov in 8th place really does seem to have the bit between his teeth at the moment. Meanwhile, Milan Milchev has fallen off the back of Lazar Kaczarski, as we saw there briefly. Joris Ulms taking all the curb he can through Spoon there. Has to be careful, because that AstroTurf just beyond the curbing, it definitely bites back. Ask me how I know. Commentated on Ferrari Challenge Japan here at Suzuka a few weeks ago. A lot of the drivers there, they'll realise that the corner is gone, and they will just go straight on to make sure they don't spin the car on the AstroTurf, trying to keep it inbound. Better to realise you made the error and just preserve the metal in the real world, certainly. Shopov and Koenig. Some 5.7 seconds clear of 3rd place man Ventsislav Rachinov. These two have been the class of the field this year, I think. That's pretty much an indisputable fact. With less than 5 minutes of this race left to go, will Joris Ulms be able to make a move on Janowski? He's been looking increasingly threatening for that 6th position. And I'll tell you what, Stefanov really is pushing in the murk behind them as well. He's been closing in. He's within a second now. Lest we forget that with the reverse grid, that means that the AM class leader will start 3rd in the race to come. There's Rachinov running 3rd position. It's been a solid, if undramatic, race since the first few corners, where there, of course, we saw side by side between Rachinov and Svetanov. Since then, it has calmed down between the two of them. Joris Ulms has probably had the most frenetic race of anybody. Oh, wide there from Janowski up ahead of him. Manages to keep it on the track, but possibly a dent in the armour there. Just a little bit of a showcase that, yes, indeed, he can make an error. Touch and go whether we're going to get 10 or 11 laps, because we're just lapping in the high 2 minutes to the 2:01s at the moment, but Koenig has been closing in. The gap that went out to 1.2 seconds is now back to basically nothing. In fact, this is the closest they've been since the first few corners of the day. As Philip Koenig got a little bit more in the back pocket at this stage. Just on 3 minutes to go. This could be the penultimate lap, depending on exactly when they cross the line next time. Time, regardless of that, is certainly running out, and Shopov knows that he needs to do some defending. defensive line there through the hairpin. That's a great overtaking opportunity as well, going into that hairpin corner. You can take a bit more speed and effectively block pass. And Shopov is all too aware of that. They power out of Spoon. It's a good run out of Spoon from Philipp Koenig. Koenig now in the slipstream as they approach 130R. Only the bravest makes moves at 130R. I don't think Koenig is quite close enough. But look at that, less than a tenth and a half between them as they flick through 130R at full speed. They both ace the turn in there. You have to be dead on right through that corner, and both of them were. I think we're going to get 2 more laps at the end of this one. In fact, I'm not quite sure. We'll wait and see on that front. Whether this is the penultimate lap or the last lap is really going to come into a few tenths of a second. I do think we're just about on the final lap of the race. Joris Ums, meanwhile, still on the back of Julian Janowski. And Janowski, in turn, seems to have been closing in on Rostislav Kochev as well. 5th, 6th and 7th all running in tandem. Will there be a move here? Will there be a move out at the front of the order? Koenig there very aggressive on the curbs through Degner, but he manages to get it stopped, manages to get through the turn nicely. Looked a little bit later on the brakes there at the hairpin as well. Doesn't affect his apex nor his power out of the corner. Again, 4/10 of a second the gap. We saw it go down to well under 2 tenths after Spoon last time. Does he ace the Spoon corner again? Oh, he really does. That was about as on the edge as you can be through Spoon. He's in the slipstream. I don't know that he's going to be close enough, though. Let's wait and see. Can he find the opportunity to make a move at the Casio Triangle? I think they have 1 more lap after this, but it is going to be very much tough touch and go. Koenig is going for a dive. He goes to the outside line. They're side by side through the triangle. Koenig doesn't quite keep his nose in it. Now, do we have 1 more lap or not? Is this the end of the race? Does Shopov cross the line to win it? I believe. Final lap of the race. So the final lap begins now. We are still racing on lap 11. What a dramatic motor race this has been. Shopov and Koenig still going at it. Krastin Stanchev chasing Dimitar Palazov as well for off-track racing. This is for 5th place in the AM class. Julian Janowski dives to the inside of Rostislav Kochev. They touch, and Julian Janowski gets the worst of it. Joris Ums manages to take evasive action. He moves up to 6th place. And our leader in AM, Vladislav Stefanov, who's having a brilliant race. He's all the way up into 7th position. As it stands, Chris Vasilyov is on for pole in the pit stop race. He sits 10th overall. And he's currently 7 seconds clear of the 11th place man, Dimitrov. In fact, he's closing on Serafimov in 9th place. So those two could have a scrap before the end of this. Vladislav Shopov has had very little reprieve over the course of this race. Let's see if Philipp Koenig nails it to his colours to the flag once again. Through Spoon. Yet again, just so committed through Spoon Bend, but I don't think he's going to be close enough. He gets a mighty run out of the corner, though. Look at how the gap is going down. The delta just being chipped away because of that corner exit by Koenig. Uncompromising run through the corner, but he's still going to be about 3.5 tenths back when they hit the brakes for the Casio Triangle, but he spins it at the very last time through 130R. He will remain in 2nd place, but there is an illustration of the fine margins once again at 130R, and Vladislav Shopov takes the win. And with that win, I think, provisionally speaking, goes the championship as well. Vladislav Shopov takes the race victory. Koenig takes second place. Venceslav Radjanov third. Iordanin Svetanov in fourth place. Here comes Joris Ums in sixth behind Rostislav Kochev. Seventh place will go to AM winner Vladislav Stefanov. And side by side across the line there for P10. That was Vasiliov just being beaten to the line by Serafimov actually for ninth place. But Vasiliov will have a 10th place overall, of course. And therefore pole position for the follow-up. Krastin Stanchev takes 14th overall there. Krastin Stanchev will be fairly happy with that. Someone who won't be so pleased is Milen Milchev. He will have his AM lead cut down significantly by not taking the flag there. Philip Koenig did very well to not find the wall coming out of 130R. That was a stunning pirouette, I grant you, but it was not what he wanted to do. Meanwhile, Julian Janowski also in the wars there at the end of the race, fully sideways after that little touch between himself and Rostislav Kochev. The tiniest touch can have the most profound effect, as we saw there. There you go, the race coming to an end. Milen Milchev will cross the line. And looks like he'll be classified 18th as well. And while that's not great, it's also not bad. He'll still be classified 6th in AM, which will do him a few favours at least in terms of the championship. Vladislav Shopov then wins the race. And I think, with the drop scores not taken into account, I think he would have enough points to secure the championship. The drop scores may change that slightly. Nonetheless, he wins this race. Philip Koenig takes second position with a spectacular run through 130R on the last lap. Radjanov takes third, Svetanov fourth. Kochev in fifth place ahead of Joris Ums. Vladislav Stefanov with a brilliant AM win in the Mercedes. He finishes ahead of Julian Janowski. Ivo Serafimov in ninth, and Chris Vasiliov will take pole position for the 40-minute race with 10th overall there. Plamen Dimitrov in 11th, then Mavrodiev in 12th place, Palauzov in 13th, Krastin Stanchev and Lazar Kaczarski bring you down to 15th position. Roy Vivek, after his moment early on, finishes 16th. Nikolov, Milchev and Dimitrov bring us down to 19th position. A very dramatic race here with a crescendo right at the end. The Suzuka circuit coming up trumps already. We now throw to some messages from our commercial partners as we get ready for the pit stop race. The final feature race, the final pit stop race of the BULERS SimGear GT3 Premier League is about to get started with the reverse top 10 based on the previous grid results. That means that Chris Vrasilyov is on pole position for our season finale. He's joined on the front row by Ivo Serafimov. It's then Julian Janowski in third place alongside Vladislav Stefanov, the AM winner from the earlier race, with a solid second row starting position for this one. Joris Ums sits fifth ahead of Rostislav Kochev in sixth place. Then it's Jordan and Svetanov in seventh, Ventislav Rachanov eighth, and then at the quick two from the race that was just gone, Philip Koenig and Vladislav Shopov, who has one hand and four fingers on that championship. Dimitrov and Mavrodiev bringing us down to 12th place. Then it is Palauzov, Krastin Stanchev, Lazar Kaczarski and Roy Vivek down to 16th place. Nikolov, Milen Milchev on the verge of an AM championship. He starts 18th, and Ivelo Dimitrov brings us to the rear of the grid. So then, the cars are rolling and ready. Formation lap is all but complete, and this is the final 40-minute pit stop race. We close out the season here at Suzuka with 40 minutes of action. Who's going to come out on top in Japan? The lights go on and we are racing, and look at that start from the Mercedes. Vladislav Stefanov on the outside line with a good start. Chris Vrasilyov from pole had a very good start as well. He will lead into the first corner. The Mercedes trying to go around the outside of Julian Janowski for second place, but Janowski, I think, with the high ground will just about hold on to P2. Yes, he does. Third place then falls to the AM class leader, the sole Mercedes in the top 10, Vladislav Stefanov. Fourth place to Joris Ums and Svetanov in fifth position. Not the best of starts for Ventislav Rachanov. He's down to 10th place. Top three, or top four, pretty much all together there. Joris Ums on the attack early on, after briefly fighting as high as fifth place in the first race. Joris Ums would love a top five finish in this one. He'd love a podium if he can possibly get it. And he's right on the rear wing of Vladislav Stefanov at the moment. To the inside for the lead, meanwhile, goes Julian Janowski at the hairpin. Very good move from Janowski, but Vrasilyov with the better X out of the corner. A negative delta by Madness driver retains the lead. Look at Janowski flashing the headlights, letting him know he's there as they come up to Spoon. Around the outside at Spoon is very brave. Julian Janowski is very brave, but he's not quite going to get it done, I don't think. He's given a good amount of racing room, and actually a bit of a slideways snap there, almost put him to the inside line. Here comes the Merc, the big 6.2 litre V8 front engine Mercedes-AMG GT3. Under pressure as well, though, from Joris Ums. Cuts the nose off of the Belgian, though, retains third position. Does Vladislav Stefanov. A great first lap of racing. One car wide in the back of shot there. Oh, and Janowski goes straight on across the Casio triangle. Vrasilyov gets back through. Lots and lots of drama on the first lap, and I think a slowdown penalty has probably just gone the way of Janowski. He drops down to fifth place. Vrasilyov and Stefanov, your top two then. And look at the Mercedes, look at the AM class driver. He is right up there and fighting for position. Koenig also making up places. He's up to sixth position. Side by side there with Ivo Serafimov in the 28th. Serafimov, who was on the front row of the grid, of course, got a poor start, got bogged down. I think just missed his cue as the lights went out, and the net result is that he's already outside the top five. Philip Koenig watching the top five through his windscreen at the moment. Svetanov losing out there to Janowski. Janowski working his way back up into fourth position, of course, after straight lining the chicane on the first lap. Koenig under the bridge, homing in on the rear of Jordan and Svetanov. To the inside goes Koenig, and sure enough, he gets through. Very nicely done there, and good awareness as well from Svetanov. I think he saw that one coming. Vladislav Shopov is just behind him as well, so the two drivers who finished 1 and 2 in the previous race, working their way through the order. It's Chris Vrasilyov that still leads the way from pole position. We've seen poles in these reverse grid races converted to podiums before. And Joris Ums is up in 3rd place now. That's as a result, of course, of the moment for Janowski, who now sits in 4th position. Oh, and a moment in the back of shot. That was Janowski. Janowski going into the wall. Deep into the corner goes Iordanin Svetanov. That's going to hand 4th place to Philip Koenig and 5th place to Vladislav Shopov. So they're already both into the top 5, the 2 drivers that started from 9th and 10th. But Julian Janowski has fallen to the very rear of the field with a moment at 1:30 Ivo Serafimov in 7th position now. And he's got Rachinov now behind him. Stefanov and Ums are going really close together through the S's in 2nd and 3rd place. Of course, Stefanov is leading in the AM class. The 2nd place car in AM is Plamen Dimitrov, 10th overall for Negative Delta Academy. We just see them in the foreground of shot there. Milen Milchev, 3rd in class for off-track racing. That would be enough for him to be the champion. Serafimov losing out there to Ventsislav Rachinov, or is he? I said side by side through Degner was hard. We're getting to see an illustration of that as they power out of Degner 2 under the bridge. Rachinov just about holds on to P7. Great racing then in the early stages of this one. The reverse grid as intended, making a lot of things very entertaining. Stefanov there momentarily going missing, but remains in 2nd place. Joris Ums would love to try and get past and try and challenge Chris Vrasilyov, but certainly Vladislav Stefanov seems to have that Mercedes hooked up around this Suzuka circuit. He had a really solid first race. Joris Ums won't like what's coming up behind him, though. Koenig and Shopov are closing in at a rate of knots. Top 5 split by about 2 seconds. Stefanov, Ums, Koenig, Shopov all basically turn into that corner, the Casio triangle, as one. Vrasilyov just about a second clear of Stefanov in 2nd place. Here comes Koenig. Joris Ums not quite getting the run he wanted out of the triangle. Koenig to the inside line as they approach the first corner, and Vladislav Shopov might be able to sneak through as well. He does. Shopov follows Koenig through. 4th place then to the driver, who I think will have already secured the championship, but certainly will have done so long as he nets a decent finish in this race. Philip Koenig already up into 3rd place then, and Vladislav Shopov is following him every inch of the way. The 2 drivers who were the class of the field earlier on in tandem, making their way through. Alexander Nikolov with Roy Vivek just behind him in 14th and 15th place. And look at that, Koenig right on the rear wing of the Mercedes, and the inside is left open. Koenig doesn't need to be asked twice. Stefanov allows him through. Let's see how long it takes Vladislav Shopov to do the same. Flick into Spoon once again. I tell you what, Stefanov looking racy. Doesn't want to give up 2nd position. Koenig powers out of the 2nd element of Spoon. It's 5 teams in the top 5 as well. Negative Delta by Madness's Chris Vrasilyov, German Sim Racing's Philip Koenig, Vladislav Stefanov in 3rd place for Red Zone, or is he? Because here comes Impulse Racing's Vladislav Shopov. It's Vladislav on Vladislav, but the Red Zone Racing driver just about holds on. The 5th place car is the Automex Psycho Radio's entry of Joris Ums, and in fact he's going to get some revenge here on Vladislav Shopov. He's going to try and gain that position back. A bad run out of the triangle from Shopov as he avoided Vladislav Stefanov, and it's allowed Joris Ums back through into 4th place. However, Shopov fully committed around the outside, tries to hold on to try and get the inside for the 3rd apex of the lap, and he might well have it. Or still side by side as they start to go through the S's. Side by side through the S's is never easy to accomplish, and Vladislav Shopov is holding on. He's dug his nails in to the side of that 32 car of Joris Ums. But Ums eventually holds on to that 4th position. The 2 negative Delta cars, Svetanov and Rachinov, side by side as well. And it's Svetanov that gets the better of that exchange for 6th position. And look at that for the lead. Philip Koenig has already attached himself to the rear of Vasiliev's car, and his favourite overtaking place is once again left open. Koenig gets her into the lead, and in the back of Shopov gets up to 4th place. This time, perhaps definitively, gets past Joris Ums. Shopov up to 4th place, and here comes Jordan Svetanov as well. He's in the tow. He's trying to follow through into 5th place, and he does get through. Joris Ums has to allow him by. In fact, both negative Delta cars get through. Venceslav Rachinov also getting past. But what about Joris Ums? Can he try and fight back? We've already seen him do it once. Kochev, Serafimov and Dimitrov rounding out your top 10 at the moment, but Philip Koenig is now your race leader. There's Serafimov being pursued, or rather pursuing, Rostislav Kochev. Just behind them, the other Porsche, the more multicoloured entry, the negative Delta Academy entry of Plamen Dimitrov, sits 2nd in the AM class, of course, behind Vladislav Stefanov, who sits 3rd overall. As a rule, we expect pit stops somewhere around that 23-24 minute mark. Roy Vivek still on the back of Dimitar Palauzov as well. Palauzov, the only Lamborghini entered into this season finale, and keeping Vivek at bay for the time being. Alexander Nikolov, the Chekhov rally team, just behind them in the Ferrari. Side by side, Vivek with a good run. Dimitar Palauzov for off-track racing has the inside for the next Degner, but he's early on the brakes, and that allows Vivek to slip through around the outside. 12th position to Vivek, and the Ferrari of Nikolov sneaks through also. Side by side, meanwhile, for 3rd place, Vladislav Shopov will have the inside line, the 1st apex of Spoon. There's not much that Vladislav Stefanov can do about that. This time Stefanov has definitively lost out there, it seems, to Vladislav Shopov. Shopov will know that to all intents and purposes he is the BULERS SimGear GT3 Premier League champion. But he is still pressing on, wants to have fun here in the season finale. Be a good 2-3 months before we go racing in this league again. Wants to wrap off the season in a high. Lazar Kaczarski on the back of Ivaylo Dimitrov. This is for 16th overall. Kaczarski and Dimitrov both in Ferraris, and then behind them is Vladimir Mavrodiev in one of the off-track racing BMWs. Speaking of off-track racing BMWs, Milen Nilchev running 15th overall, which is 5th in AM. And that should be good enough for him to leave this weekend as champion. Vladislav Shopov now getting his turn to try and get past Chris Vasiliov. Of course, the faster he gets past Vasiliov, the more chance he has of closing in on Koenig later on. Already the gap is out to 2.8 seconds, and Shopov makes the dive at the hairpin. Close quarters racing between them, but fair racing between them as well. And Vladislav Shopov gets up to second place. Will Vasilyov try and fire back? He's flashing the headlights as they approach Spoon. Both through the corner. Shopov will want to get a good run out of Spoon to try and negate the potential effect of the slipstream towards 130R. He did get a good run out of the corner. I think he should be safe from Vasilyov unless Vasilyov makes a dive at the Casio triangle. He nails 130R. He might just have the opportunity. But I think he's too far back. Looks to me as if he agrees. Remains behind Shopov. Vladislav Shopov then up to second place. Serafimov and Dimitrov still fighting it out for 9th and 10th as well. And into the pits goes Ventislav Rachinov. That's an early pit stop for Ventislav. Quite a lot earlier than we'd have thought. Vladimir Mavrodiev, meanwhile, lots more traction off the triangle. It'll be side by side between Mavrodiev and Kaczarski down the main straight, and Mavrodiev gets past Kaczarski. Kaczarski, of course, the closest competition to Milan Milchev in the championship in AM, so Mavrodiev doing his off-track racing counterpart some favours there. Mavrodiev himself is 6th in the standings and a ways off the top 5. Vladislav Stefanov still certainly in contention for an overall podium, given the amount of pace he's got. Can't rule it out. Getting a replay here of Vladimir Mavrodiev kissing the rear of Milan Milchev a bit there and actually getting himself into a spin as a result. So Mavrodiev fell down the order as a result of that little bit of contact and had to do it all again. So he's now on the way back up the field. Julian Janowski has had a moment out there. He went straight on at the chicane, but I think he was getting out of the way. He's currently 3 laps down. Of course, it was Janowski who went on that spin at 130R earlier on, so perhaps Janowski just lapping at the rear of the field and staying out of everybody's way. Here's a replay of Janowski's incident, and oof, yeah. That was a heavy hit, wasn't it? That's how he ended up down the order and out of the race. In fact, I think he peeled off to the chicane to avoid getting in everyone's way immediately after that. Vasilyov, meanwhile, still under pressure from Vladislav Stefanov. Stefanov holding the Merc flag aloft and saying, look, we can do it. Bit of a highlight reel here of Julian Janowski's moments in the race. Of course, he briefly led, but he did so after cutting the Casio triangle. Oh, look at this. Joris Ums on the offensive. Iordanin Svetanov is under pressure from the Belgian, who again, don't think has had a top 5 finish this year. He'd love to finish with his best result of the season. Already almost half distance in this 40-minute race. The first 18 minutes have flown by. Svetanov a bit wide there. That could give an opportunity to Joris Ums. Just couldn't quite get the car turned in, and Ums with the inside at 130R, but I don't think he got a good enough run. He's not quite going to be side by side into the corner. And Joris Ums does have to settle for P6 for the time being. Roy Vivek for Automex Psycho Radios there. Here's Milan Milchev as well, facing his teammate Palauzov, who just lets him through there. We know that they, like most teams, are in a chat together. I suspect that was coordinated. Both Joris Ums and Roy Vivek are into pit lane, so we've seen a few drivers in the pits before half distance, which is a fairly unique strategy call. So far this season, we've not seen much of that. Of course, it was Ventsislav Rachinov who had a pit stop earlier on as well. Vladislav Stefanov in the wheel tracks of Chris Vasilyov at the moment. Still challenging then for an overall podium, your AM leader. Having his drive of the season, certainly, in the Mercedes, which he really seems to have got dialed up for this circuit. Perhaps his internet is dial up with some of the issues he's having, but hopefully that doesn't affect him. Chris Vasilyov has not had many moments of peace so far in this race, it must be said. Has been keeping an eye on those rear view mirrors, keeping an eye on what's going on behind him. You've got to be so aware, especially if you get a bad exit from the corner or something like that. Realistically, once you've collected it up, your first thing has to be looking in the rear view mirrors, making sure that no one's now alongside you. Vladislav Stefanov over the curbs then on the run uphill through the S's. This is lap 11 of the race already. Most of the top drivers still owe us a pit stop. Of course, this track is quite heavy on the tyres as well, so perhaps strategically they want to get the rubber off and get a new set on fairly quickly. Stefanov just studying Chris Vasilyov's Porsche, as he has done for several laps here, maybe just trying to suss out the strengths and weaknesses of his Mercedes versus the Porsche. But certainly that Merc has looked strong. One of the best performances we've seen out of an AM driver all season long, really. Flicks in to 130 up. Chris Vasilyov. We've got a great cameraman here in Vasilyov, watching the big Mercedes taking the curbs at Casio. Porsche was a bit more ragged there coming out of the final chicane, but Stefanov, I don't think, has got that much more drive than the Porsche out of the corner. He is closing and closing some more. The straight wasn't quite long enough for him to draw alongside. At the front of the field, Philip Koenig still about 2.4 seconds up on Vladislav Shopov, so that gap is still about where it was before Shopov got past Vasilyov. Now a three-car battle for third place as well, because Svetanov is right there with Vasilyov and yes, Svetanov is right there with Stefanov and Vasilyov in the battle for third place. So that's now a three-car scrap for the lead. Does look like Shopov is slowly, maybe just ebbing in a little bit on Koenig, but certainly not going to be a battle on track imminently unless there is a moment at the front for Koenig. I love how uncompromising he is through Spoon, even when he's not in a battle. Just takes all that curb that he can. Precision driving to the nth degree. Jordan and Svetanov, meanwhile, still chasing Vladislav Stefanov. As I said, 3-car battle now. Svetanov has roped in both his negative delta by madness teammate and the Red Zone Racing Mercedes. In AM, it is still, of course, that Mercedes that leads. Plamen Dimitrov and Krastin Stanchev completing your top 3 in the AM class, all of whom are in the overall top 10. Into the pits has gone Chris Vasilyov, so the driver who was in 3rd bails out, and so does Ivo Serafimov. So 2 more drivers from the overall top 10 electing to make that pit stop. Alexander Nikolov also in. Dan and Svetanov now, of course, fighting for 3rd place with Stefanov now that the car ahead of them has pitted. Let's see how long it takes for these two, and indeed our leading duo, to make a pit stop as well. Joris Ums, of course, was quite an early pitter. He's found himself, though, behind Ivaylo Dimitrov and maybe losing a bit of time as a result of that. In fact, Ums there, we seem to lose him momentarily. Chris Vasilyov, we saw there. There is Joris Ums with Ivaylo Dimitrov, trying to get back into the top 10 here. Of course, a few drivers still owing us a pit stop, so this isn't his true on-track position, but Ums wanting to get past the AM class Ferrari as quick as he can. Dimitrov holds his ground. Oh, but then hits the wall. Dimitrov just making a small error there. And thankfully, Joris Ums didn't get taken out. While that's all going on, Vladimir Mavrodiev is pursuing Alexander Nikolov. I don't think Mavrodiev has pitted yet, but Nikolov certainly has. The top 4 are all in the pits as Dimitrov again goes out wide with Roy Vivek in his inside. We get a replay here of Dimitrov into the wall. But while that's going on, Koenig and Shopov, our race leaders, are in the pits, and so are Stefanov and Svetanov. Koenig exits the pits still ahead of Vladislav Shopov. What about the others? Where does Vladislav Stefanov come out relative to Svetanov? The answer is that Svetanov takes 3rd place. I think Vasilyov into 4th as well. So the Red Zone Racing Mercedes, the 115 car, has come back out in 5th position. They've all left the pits now. Krastin Stanchev also back out onto the circuit in 10th place. Here comes Alexander Nikolov past the pit lane. But what's the gap now between Koenig and Shopov? Well, it's still 2.4 seconds, so the pit stop's barely done anything to their gap. Koenig and Shopov still 2.3 apart, so it is almost exactly what it was before. However, Svetanov is now in 3rd place, Vasilyov in 4th position, Stefanov 5th, and Ums in 6th place. So a little bit of shuffling there in the middle phase of the top 10. Most of the front runners have now made a pit stop. And with that, we have less than 12 minutes remaining of this final race of the year. This man, Vladislav Shopov, is on course for his first ever championship in BULERS. That would be an achievement that he will relish. Venceslav Rachinov, meanwhile, who made that early pit stop earlier on, is still only 14th. I think his pit stop was forced by an issue more so than anything else. Still outside the top 10 even after most of the field have made their stops. Vasilyov, meanwhile, side by side with Svetanov for the third and final podium position. Negative delta versus negative delta. And Vasilyov gets through into third place there. Svetanov tried to hold on around the outside, but didn't have the pace for that. Palauzov goes wide at Casio triangle. Loses out and now finds himself side by side with Alexander Nikolov. It looks like Palauzov is going to fall to 15th place here unless he can hold on around the outside. That Lamborghini a little bit quicker by the end of the straight, I think, but Nikolov will hold on to 14th there for now. Serafimov and Plamen Dimitrov running 8th and 9th place. Now, Serafimov is a pro-class driver, of course. Dimitrov is in the AM classification. So Plamen Dimitrov currently second in the AM class, and he'll be just as worried about Serafimov as he is about Krastin Stanchev. Stanchev there third in class at the moment, and right there with those two Porsches also. Of course, it's Milen Milchev who is potentially on his way to the AM class championship. Again, not able to factor in drop scores with the information that I have, but I think that even with drop scores, Milen Milchev is currently doing more than enough to secure the championship. Closest competition, Lazar Katsgarsky being behind him. Ivo Serafimov right there in the slip, shadowing, literally shadowing Dimitrov there, who goes out wide. And Serafimov takes the opportunity. Ivo Serafimov gets through. But 8th overall, Plamen Dimitrov then now has to worry about second place in AM, falling to Krastin Stanchev. Stanchev for off-track racing, chasing the negative Delta Academy car across the line. There is Joris Ulms still on just the outside of that top 5 finish that he'd love to have to end the season. Vladislav Stefanov just ahead of him, the AM class leader. Here's Krastin Stanchev closing in and touching the rear of Dimitrov. Plamen Dimitrov slowed there through the S's, caught out Krastin Stanchev, and Stanchev spins out a third in AM, hands the position, funny enough, to Milen Milchev, his teammate. Roy Vivek also inheriting 10th overall because of that. Here's Svetanov racing. The third place was Chris Vasilyov. We get a replay there of Krastin Stanchev going the wrong way after that collision. So easy to just take a nibble out of somebody else, especially if they slow down on the apex like that. And often it's you that ends up facing the wrong way. Joris Ulms looking to challenge Vladislav Stefanov here for that 5th position. Joris Ulms for Automex Psycho Radios wants to end the season with his best result, but to do that, he's going to have to get through the AM class leader. While all of this is going on, the gap is shrinking a little bit at the front of the order. Nowhere near a battle yet, but Shopov is now within 2 seconds. 1.8 is the gap between he and Philip Koenig with 7 minutes left to go. It's going to be a stretch to see a battle for the win before the end, but Shopov is pressing on nonetheless to try and finish with a top step. Jordan and Svetanov flicks it through the S's. Chris Vrasiljov currently on the verge of converting to a podium. Has had a really solid race here in the number 14 car. Of course, the reverse grid did him some favours in terms of where he started, but he's held his ground, put in the race pace, and he's still just absorbing that pressure from Jordan and Svetanov. Vladislav Stefanov behind under some pressure from Joris Ums as well. This is increasingly becoming a 4-car train. In fact, maybe even a 5-car train, because Rostislav Kochev isn't far away either. So while Vrasiljov and Svetanov continue to fight, Stefanov and Ums are closing in slightly. And Rostislav Kochev may make it a 5-car train before the end of this race. We've got 5.5 minutes left to go here at Suzuka. Vrasiljov and Svetanov are basically on top of each other as they head to 130 up. The two negative Delta Porsches as one. They've got to be so careful, of course, especially in the case of Svetanov with the aero wash coming out of the corner. Manages to keep it pointing in the right direction. Those Porsches in particular look sketchy if you get it a little bit wrong at 130 up. Has been a showcase of some masterful driving this year. The Sim Gear GT3 Premier League. We've seen some brilliant fighting just like this all season long, whether you've thrown us at Portimao or Laguna Seca, Road America. Doesn't matter where we go, the racing has always been brilliant. Suzuka, the final step on this calendar, of course. And in just over 4 minutes' time, the season will conclude. And it looks as though Vladislav Shopov will be crowned our champion in the BULERS SimGear GT3 Premier League Pro Class. And Milen Milchev with a 3rd place finish on the cards in AM. Although he is being pursued by Krastin Stanchev. Looks like Milchev will take the AM class title as well. Vladislav Stefanov, though, having one of the AM performances of the season there. In 5th place overall, still with an outside shot at a podium. Mercedes AMG GT3 from Red Zone Racing seems to be gelling very well with the technical twisting Suzuka circuit. The traditional home of the Japanese Grand Prix. One of the most revered circuits, not just in the Asian region, but in the world. Jordan and Svetanov would love to finish this with a podium, but Chris Vrasiljov has been putting nary a foot wrong over the course of this race distance. Maybe didn't have the pace to hold off Koenig and Shopov, who've really been in their own bracket so far this weekend. He's doing everything right despite almost 4 cars now on his boot lid. Svetanov, Stefanov, Ums and Kochev all waiting in the wings. The gap between Koenig and Shopov has now stabilized at 2.5 seconds, so Shopov was closing. That's no longer an issue. Move for 3rd place though. Jordan and Svetanov gets through there at the start of the S's. We just saw it on this onboard. Svetanov getting a little bit snaky there through the S's as well. But he manages to find a way past Chris Vrasiljov. Can Vrasiljov respond with a maneuver? Will we see him try something maybe at the hairpin where we've seen so many moves in this race? He's right on board still with Joris Ums. He's keen to get past Stefanov, but what's going on up ahead? Will Vrasiljov have a go at the hairpin? No, he does not. He remains behind Jordan and Svetanov, who now sits in 3rd place. The negative delta by Madness Porsches have swapped positions. 90 seconds remain. Our top two will be starting the final lap this time by. Will the rest of the top five remain in the same order? We've seen Vasyliov finally lose out to Svetanov. Can Vladislav Stefanov hold on to fifth position up against Joris Ums on this final lap of the race? White flag is out then, so the leaders have crossed the line to begin the last lap now. And Vasyliov gets back through there, but I think he might have done so by going off circuit. Jordan and Svetanov demoted back to fourth place. We saw Vasyliov go out very, very, very wide at 130R, but the net result is that he's back in third place, at least for the time being. This five-way fight for third place has been very good entertainment. Philipp Koenig. We just saw him on screen briefly, leading the way comfortably. Well, the gap has shrunk again to 1.7 seconds, but I think Koenig just managing it on the last couple of corners now. Here's your battle for third place. Vasyliov, Svetanov, Stefanov and Ums, with Rostislav Kochev right there with them as well. The five cars power under 130R towards the hairpin. For the last time in this race, the clock has gone over 40 minutes now. This is going to be the last lap of the season, and it'll be the final win of the season for Philipp Koenig. He will secure second in the championship with that result as well. Here comes Koenig around the Casio triangle, but just behind him is Vladislav Shopov. And while it's Koenig that will take the spoils in the final race, Vladislav Shopov for the first time is a champion in BULERS. He is our 2024 Season 8 champion. A great result for Vladislav Shopov. He finishes it with a second place. But P1 in the championship. Vladislav Stefanov, as the negative delta Porsches collide, it will be Stefanov that claims a podium. The AM class winner is going to claim an overall podium. Oh, goodness me, the negative delta Porsches take each other out at the very last corner of the season. And that is going to be unpopular at negative delta by madness. Svetanov and Vasyliov finished 6th and 7th place after their collision. And that hands Vladislav Stefanov a podium. That hands Joris Ums a 4th place finish as well. Great result for him. Rostislav Kochev takes 5th. Oh my goodness. And while all of that was going on, we get a replay from Vasyliov's point of view. It was Vasyliov getting tagged there by the looks of it by Jordan and Svetanov. While those two came to blows, we missed Milen Milchev crossing the line, but with third in the AM class, he will be the AM champion as well. But we get replays there of the collision between Vasyliov and Svetanov. You draw your own conclusions. I don't think either party will be happy with that. Lazar Kaczarski must have had a moment towards the end. He eventually crossed the line in 17th. I think he will still be the runner-up in the championship, and jackpot's down to 5th place in the championship, so still a good result for him, although he ended the season with a spin because he tapped the rear of Vladimir Mavrozhiev, so not the final lap of the year that he'd have wanted, but still gets it back on track and claims 17th place. Vasyliov. Wow, Svetanov was a long way back. Now, did he get tapped into it, or was he just that late on the brakes? No, he was just late on the brakes. Was a bizarre conclusion to the season. I think you'll agree. But the net result is that Philip Koenig is your race winner in at the final race of the season. Koenig will finish second in the championship. But he'll finish with a win. Vladislav Shopov with the championship glory in the BULERS SimGear GT3 Premier League. He takes second ahead of Vladislav Stefanov, who claims an overall podium in dramatic circumstances. Joris Ums takes fourth. Rostislav Kochev takes fifth. Chris Vasilyov sixth. Ivo Serafimov in seventh. Plamen Dimitrov in eighth place. Roy Vivek and Milen Milchev, the AM class champion, round out the top 10. Ventsislav Rachinov in 11th place. Krastin Stanchev 12th. Alexander Nikolov 13th. Vladimir Mavrodiev 14th place. Svetanov 15th. Palauzov 16th. Kaczarski, Janovsky and Dimitrov, the remainder of the order, in a dramatic conclusion to the BULERS SimGear GT3 Premier League. We're a bit down on entries this week, but certainly not down on action. Of course, now is the time where we hear from some of the drivers involved with that. We'll get some names into the commentary box in the next few moments. And indeed, we start with Vladislav Stefanov. Vladislav, an overall podium. Good job.
Thank you, thank you.
Amazing stuff, man. It looked like, even before the reverse grid put you on the second row, it looked like you had really good pace in that Mercedes all weekend.
Well, it was a bit hard to find the pace with the Mercedes because it's very slippery. And its tires like nothing. So yeah, it was very hard to manage the tires. Yeah, that's it.
You were holding on to that third place for a long time, and then of course you dropped down to fifth, but then it all happened in the last corner in your favor.
Yeah.
I guess it can't, as much as that would have been negative delta, the two teammates ahead of you. A great way for you to finish the season, an AM win and an overall podium.
Yeah, absolutely. It was huge luck.
It was, but man, you were right up there with the pros in that one. That was one of the more impressive AM drives we've seen this season, so you should be very proud.
Thanks a lot.
Excellent, mate. Well, have a good rest of your evening. Thanks for joining us and racing tonight at Suzuka. We hope to see you again racing very soon. I understand that now we're being joined, is this Julian Janovsky who's come in as well? Yes, it is. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks, man.
Dramatic race for you. You were fighting for the lead in the early stages. Then you had that moment at 130R. 130R in these GT3 cars, it's one of those corners that's brilliant if you get it perfectly right. But if you're 2% wrong, that's it, isn't it?
Yeah, it's right. But I not have practice this week. I'm sick and home. I have very bad temperature, and for that, very low practice, and I lose my car. I am very disappointed for that. But happens this race. It's nothing changed. I have very good opportunity from place 3, but and finish in the last.
Well, man, given you had so little practice and you're not feeling well, you started the race really well and you had a good first race as well. So I'm glad that you managed to take part even with the illness, and I think still you've got some good moments to look back at there, and we look forward to seeing you again in the next season, hopefully.
Yeah, I think so. I'm very glad you're here and appreciate from everything. And for me, have a nice night in a week.
Maybe the Indy
bank holiday
500
here.
Maybe the Indy 500 will make you feel a bit less ill if they
Yeah.
actually get to race this evening.
Yep. Tomorrow I think here is bank holiday. So yeah.
Well, there you go. That means you can have a few Irish drinks before the evening ends.
Yeah, I think so. No, I no drink. That's
Okay, fair enough. Well, thank you for joining us in the commentary box, Julian. Have a good rest of your night.
Thanks. Have a nice.
Thank you, mate. Well, we now have to talk to the newest Pro Class champion in the BULERS SimGear GT3 Premier League. We've got both the race winner and the championship winner in the box. First to you, Vladislav Shopov. How's it feeling, my friend?
It hasn't hit yet. I think it's gonna take a few days before it hits me. But right now, it just feels like just normal post race interview. Hasn't hit me yet. Yeah.
It's coming. I'll text you in the morning and see if it's hit yet.
Probably won't be awake.
Well, talk me through the races then. The Suzuka circuit, always a difficult mistress to work with. You had a very interesting set of battles with Philipp Koenig in both races. How do you feel about your performance in the finale?
I love the track. I absolutely adore the track. I think I'm pretty good at it in GT4 machinery, but GT3 is a little bit more tricky. I think I'm still on pace, but yeah, I think Philip in the second race, he was pulling away. I think he was using the tires. Then at some point in the race, I started catching him, so I think he was overheating his tires, or like trying not to. And then I started catching him again. And by the end of the race, I think I was pushing too much, so my tires were dead, and he just pulled away again. But GG's to him.
Well, Philip, you're in the commentary box with us at the moment. Is his diagnosis accurate?
Yes, that's absolutely true. First of all, I want to congrats to Vladi for the championship. It
Thank
was
you.
a lot of fun for driving with him and fighting, and yeah, it was just awesome. Otherwise, yeah, the race, because it was really hot on the track and I had to manage the tires, I was pushing because I knew he was 2 positions behind me, so I wanted to push and to open a gap. And after that time, like the first 30 minutes, I overheated the tires a little bit. And after that, I was struggling to with the exit of the corners and sliding. And yeah, he was catching me, but I could cool them down a little bit. And yeah, but the first race was even better for me personally. It was nice fighting. So yeah, it was just awesome season and really nice race today.
Yeah, concluding the season with a win. I suppose that serves you in good stead for your other sim racing endeavours before the next season, and hopefully we get to see you lodge a championship effort in season 9.
Oh yeah, of course. I will participate in the next season probably also again. And yeah, can't wait for sure.
Excellent. And Vladislav, to you one last time. I was told before the broadcast that you were on the verge of that first championship in BULERS. Beyond BULERS, have you won championships in sim racing before, or is this the very, very first?
No, I've been on the podium a couple of times, but it was a team effort thanks to Impulse Racing and my other sim racing team that is actually participating in this championship. It's Negative Delta. I left them to join Impulse, so yeah, a big thanks to them for like letting myself develop in there and moving on to the bigger teams. But yeah, it was pretty good season. I honestly don't even remember what you asked me, but I'm way too tired for this.
Well, you've thanked your team, which is what I was going to say. If there's any more thank yous you want to put out into the world, do, but I think you've done so. All I'll say to you now is massive congratulations again, my friend, and I hope you get to rest well.
Thank you. Can't wait to do it again.
Yeah, can't wait to have both Vladislav Shopov and Philipp Koenig, no doubt, in these post-race podium interviews again next season, and have both of them up front in the championship as they were this season as well. Well, that's it, everybody. That is the end of Season 8 of the BULERS SimGear GT3 Premier League. If you want to learn more about all things BULERS, go to bulers.com. Check out the social media platforms as well. And if you're not subscribed to pitlane.tv, make sure you do so to catch more action like this in the virtual world and indeed on the circuits and rally stages of the real world as well. It's been a hell of a season from myself, Adam Weller, and from everyone behind the BULERS SimGear GT3 Premier League. Thanks for watching and join us again for Season 9.